All right, let's get right into it. When you picture a civilization ending, what pops into your head? For most of us, it's something big, loud, and probably involves a lot of fire. But what if the greatest empires in history didn't actually fall with a bang, but with a whisper?
We've all been sort of trained by Hollywood to see the fall of a civilization as this epic, action-packed blockbuster. And it makes sense, right? It's a powerful, simple story.
You can almost see it in your mind's eye, can't you? Thousands of invaders just pouring over the city walls. Yeah, buildings are burning, priceless monuments are being smashed to bits. Just total, absolute chaos. It's a really easy narrative to get your head around. A big, strong civilization gets taken down by an even bigger, stronger enemy. But here's the thing. The actual historical record, it tells a much different and honestly a much quieter story. What if the most common reason for a civilization to crumble isn't some final epic battle? What if it's a slow, creeping unraveling, a process so gradual that the people living through it, well, they might not even realize what's happening until it's way too late? To really get this, we have to start by getting our definitions straight. That word, collapse, it sounds so final, so catastrophic. But what do historians and archaeologists actually mean when they use it? Okay, look at the keywords here. It's a loss of complexity. It's not about everyone dying. It's not about total annihilation. It's about the system itself, that intricate web that holds a large society together, just coming apart at the seams. So what does that actually look like for the people on the ground? Well, you'd see populations shrinking, or maybe just scattering into smaller villages. The central government, it loses its grip. Those trade routes that brought in fancy goods from far away, they dry up. People might even forget how to write. And those grand temples and aqueducts, they start to fall apart. Society just gets simpler, more local. This is the absolute best way to think about it. Imagine a massive power outage across a whole country. The people are still there. The cities are still standing. But the invisible grid that powers everything, that coordinates everything, has failed. That's collapse. The hardware is all there, but the software has crashed. Okay, so if it's not always war that causes the lights to go out, what does? This is where the work of an anthropologist named Joseph Tainter is so incredibly important. He came up with this brilliant idea he called the complexity trap. This quote right here is the absolute core of the idea. See, societies get more and more complex to solve problems. They build huge bureaucracies, standing armies, massive irrigation projects, and in the beginning, it works like a charm. But over time, that very complexity becomes the biggest problem of all. This chart shows you exactly how it works. Early on, you build a road network and bam, the economy explodes. It's a huge benefit for a small cost. But a few centuries later, your entire budget is just being eaten up by patching potholes in those same roads. Or you hire bureaucrats to run things. Then you have to hire more bureaucrats just to manage the first ones. Eventually, the society is spending almost all of its energy just trying to keep the whole thing from falling apart. It's treading water. So how does this trap actually spring in the real world? Well, a lot of the time, it's triggered by something really quiet and patient, running out of resources. A civilization's greatest achievements can end up planting the seeds of its own destruction. Let's look at Mesopotamia, literally the cradle of civilization. Their genius invention, irrigation, created these massive food surpluses that allowed cities to grow. But over hundreds of years, that same irrigation was slowly pulling mineral salts up to the surface of the soil. At first, the wheat crops started failing. Then, even the tougher barley couldn't grow. In the end, the breadbasket of the ancient world was poisoned by its own success. No invasion needed. And this is not just some one-off story. We see this exact pattern play out again and again. The classic Maya, they cut down so much of their forests to build their incredible cities that they probably caused regional droughts. And the people of Easter Island famously cleared all their forests, which meant they couldn't build fishing boats anymore, effectively trapping themselves. In every case, success led to overshoot, which led to collapse. So you have a system that's groaning under the weight of its own complexity, and its resource base is starting to shrink. What's the final nail in the coffin? It's when the people themselves just stop believing in the system. A healthy society runs on more than just food and roads. It runs on trust, or what political scientists call legitimacy. People have to believe that paying their taxes and following the rules is actually giving them something in return, like security or stability. But when it starts to feel like the elites are just hoarding all the wealth and not solving any real problems, that trust just evaporates. People start to check out. They abandon the cities, they stop paying taxes, they stop maintaining things. The whole system starts to rot from the inside out. And this brings us to the biggest twist of all. That classic image we started with, the one with the invading armies sacking the city? Well, it turns out they're usually the end of the story, not the beginning. Let me put it another way. Invaders don't topple a strong, healthy, functioning civilization. They just wander into a power vacuum. They're pushing on a door that was already unlocked and rotting off its hinges. By the time the so-called barbarians showed up at the gates of Rome, the system had already failed. The economy was a mess, the army wasn't getting paid, and the political will to fight back was just gone. The invasion wasn't the disease, it was the final symptom.
Now, I know this all sounds pretty dark and depressing, but there's actually another way to look at this whole thing. What if collapse isn't just a failure? What if, in a strange way, it's also a form of adaptation?
Seriously, think about it. When maintaining this massive, complex, centralized empire becomes way too expensive and it's not giving you any real benefits, the most logical thing to do is just to simplify, to let it go. Now, for the emperor and the bureaucrats in the capital city, yeah, it's a total tragedy. But for some farmer way out in a remote province, the end of the empire might just mean no more hated tax collectors and no more getting drafted to fight in some pointless war hundreds of miles away. Life goes on, just on a smaller, more manageable scale. And that really is the pattern we see over and over again through history. Civilizations aren't punished by the gods for being evil or immoral. They are, in a very real sense, victims of their own success. They grow, they get more complex, they use up their resources, and that very success creates these deep, hidden vulnerabilities that eventually bring the whole structure down. And this, for me, is the most powerful and, honestly, the most unsettling lesson in all of this. The people living through a collapse don't necessarily feel like they're in the middle of a disaster movie. They just notice that this year is a little bit worse than last year. The harvest is a little smaller. The roads have a few more potholes. It's a slow, quiet, creeping decay that just feels like the new normal, right up until the day the whole system finally gives out. So the next time you think about the end of a civilization, don't just picture the fire and the fury. Picture the silence. The silence of abandoned fields, of crumbling aqueducts, of trade routes that have gone quiet. Because what history really teaches us is that the thing we should fear most isn't the sudden shock of a sword, but the slow, silent unraveling of a system that has simply forgotten how to keep itself going.